from a low life, but now people call me the king. Tearing it up with every lyric that I bring to the table. Because I'm willing and able, I'm in more homes than Comcast cable. I got the skill that'll rattle your brain. I'm a threat like Saddam Hussein, everybody know my name. Joe Habib's a top soldier, kid they should have told you. You really need to pack a lunch. My words hit hard just like a Tyson punch. So, give me a chance, I bet you I can make it dance. Show me your girl, I bet you I get in her pants. I'm breaking egos and money is what I'm stacking. Joe Habib on the mic, you know I'm down for action. Shout out to Make Beats Sir and the Beat Smith and the whole Rope-A-Dope radio crew. Yeah.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Good morning. Well, we're still dealing with the aftermath of Crawford versus Spence, and one point of discussion that a lot of people are talking about is, why was this fight delayed so long? Why did PBC delay this fight so long? Because it always seemed to me like Top Rank and Terrence Crawford always wanted this fight, and I believe they did everything they could to try to make this fight. But in my opinion, and a lot of the evidence kind of suggests that PBC always wanted to stall this fight as long as they could before they had it made, right? And even Spence said, you know, I'm going to collect all the belts on my side of the street. And Crawford was always going to be the last piece in the puzzle. So the question is, why did they do this, right? And a lot of people have their opinions, and I'm not saying they're wrong. I was on Twitter, and Mark Ortega tweeted out that, PBC had Pacquiao, they had all the champions. Why would they fight Crawford? And then he also said Top Rank never had the money to make this fight. And I disagree with them, because we've seen Top Rank and PBC do co-promotions before. We see them do the Wilder Fury fight, and Top Rank paid Fury and PBC paid Wilder. So I don't think the money thing was that big of an issue. I'm not saying it didn't play a factor in it. All right, I know Bob Arum was concerned about paying Crawford what he was worth for the fight, and I know PBC was questioning the value of the fight. So there were some questions about that from both sides, but one side would pay their fighter and the other side would pay theirs. So it wasn't a factor of, you know, one side having to foot the bill for both fighters, and that would be, you know, a major stumbling block in that regard. So I disagree with Mr. Ortega on that one, because I do believe, like I said, that if Top Rank paid Crawford, PBC paid Spence, then, you know, you don't have to worry about footing the bill for the entire fight by yourself. It wouldn't have been on one promoter's shoulders, right? But PBC always had control of the welterweight division for a long period of time in recent years, as well as the junior middleweight division, right? They always had that, right? And in my opinion, the reason why I think that PBC stalled out this fight was, I think they were waiting for Crawford's contract with Top Rank to be up, and they always wanted to have options on Terrence Crawford, because in my opinion, they never truly believed with 100% certainty that they could win this fight, right? They never believed that Spence with 100% certainty could win this fight. It's just my opinion. But on the contrary, I do believe that Bob Arum and Terrence Crawford believed with 100% certainty that they could win this fight, and they were willing to do whatever it took to make this fight. Again, that's my opinion. You could disagree with that. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. It always appeared to me that one side wanted this fight more than the other. There was never a sense of urgency for that team, Spence and PBC. There was never a sense of urgency for them to make this fight. And the reason being is because PBC, in my opinion, wanted options on Crawford. They did not want to do a co-promotion with Crawford with the chance that Crawford could win and take all of the belts away from PBC, and they would lose their position of power within the division. So now, essentially, PBC wins in this whole scenario, right? And Spence, unfortunately, with all due respect, is the collateral damage in this scenario, right? Because now it pretty much looks like Crawford will be fighting his next fight on Showtime with PBC, right? Because they still have all the welterweights and they still have all the junior middleweights, right? You got Brian Mendoza, who's a WBC interim champ, and now you have Tim Tszyu, who's not a PBC fighter, but has fought his last couple fights on PBC and does have a great working relationship with PBC. He's been elevated to the full WBO champion, right? And then, you know, when you look at the other two belts, Jermell Charlo still has the other three. He has the WBA, the IBF, and the WBC, but it looks like it's very possible that he may end up vacating those titles, in my opinion, and fighting at 160. So then let's look at the WBA. You have Israel Madrimov, who has been fighting on a lot of Matchroom cards. He's ranked number 1 by the WBA, but I'm not sure if he has an official contract with Ahern or if he's doing a fight to fight. But I mean, something could be worked out there. And Bakram Murtazayev, who's ranked number 1 by the IBF, has fought on some PBC cards, right? So PBC does have pretty much a stronghold on the junior middleweight division as well. So PBC, at the end of the day, wanted to have their cake and eat it too, right? That's what they wanted. They did not want to risk Spence losing this fight, right? And Crawford taking all the belts over to Top Rank. So they stalled out this fight for as long as they could and waited for Crawford's contract to be up with Top Rank. And obviously, it would have been easy, and it was easy to lure Crawford over to PBC and Showtime, right? Because they had all the fighters, right? And people were critical of Terrence Crawford for re-signing with Top Rank. Why did you do that when you knew PBC had all the fighters? But I do believe that both him and Bob Arum were confident that they could do a cross-promotion with PBC. And Top Rank did offer Crawford a good contract, it seemed, right? He had a high minimum guarantee for his purses, so he was getting paid well. But after that second go-around with Top Rank, once he realized that the fight could not get made with Top Rank, he said, well, I got to go out on my own, right? And it's pretty much played out perfectly for Crawford, and it pretty much played out perfectly for PBC, because now, more than likely, I believe Crawford will finish his career out fighting on Showtime and fighting on PBC, because they still have that stronghold on 147 and 154, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So from a fan's perspective, yeah, this whole process was frustrating, right? Having to wait 5 years for this fight, right? This whole process was frustrating. And there was egos involved, right? And of course there's money involved. But at the end of the day, what this all boils down to is control and power. And we all see how PBC operates. They want to be in full control of the situation. Now, all these promoters love to do in-house fights. It's more profitable for them. It's easier in terms of the network situation. We get that. But PBC really emphasizes on this more so than everyone else. And this is no shot at PBC, but this is just looking at the circumstantial evidence, the empirical data. They will do co-promoted events, but it's always a process getting a lot of these fights over the line. It always seems to be this drawn-out process, right? More often than not. Whereas with Top Rank, they do a lot of shows, a lot of co-promoted events. You can just look at their track record, look at their history. They've done several co-promoted events. And as a result of it, if you look at the highest grossing fights, right? You look at the highest grossing fights in the history of the sport, right? A lot of them were co-promoted events, right? Pacquiao Mayweather, that was a Top Rank PBC event, right? Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather, another one. That was a co-promoted event between the UFC and Showtime, basically, right? Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. It's another fight in the record books. Co-promoted event, right? PBC, Golden Boy, right? So sometimes when these fights become so big, right, the two sides have to come together because there's just too much money on the table, right? Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis, another HBO Showtime collaboration. So we can go down the list of these fights, and you know what it all comes down to is if the fight is big enough, then the two sides will sit down together. But there was no way, in my opinion, that PBC was going to do a co-promoted event with Terence Crawford with the risk of him winning and taking away all those belts. That's what it all boiled down to, in my opinion. They were stalling this fight out because at the end of the day, they always wanted to have that opportunity, if Crawford won the fight, to be able to promote him. That's what I believe. That's what I believe. You know? So we can talk about, oh, well, there wasn't enough money for the fight. There wasn't enough interest for the fight. You know, they knew that Spence could never win. Okay, that's a good argument. I do believe that there was some belief that Spence could lose the fight. I understand that. But at the end of the day, what it all boiled down to is they wanted to hedge their bets, in my opinion. And now, I don't think they wanted to marinate it. I just think that they wanted full control of the welterweight division. They had it, and they wanted to maintain it. And the same thing with the 154-pound division. They wanted to, keep control of those two divisions. They have a stronghold on those two divisions, right? They have a stronghold on the super middleweight division, right? So they want to be in full control. They want all roads to lead to Showtime and PBC. I get it. From a business standpoint, makes sense. We may not like it as fans because we have to wait it out. I understand that. But I've said it, and I'll say it again, not to beat a dead horse. There was a reason why one side wanted it right away and the other side stalled it. And unfortunately, and I'm just going to say this, Unfortunately, I'm just going to say this, and this is going to be very controversial, but this is what I believe. And obviously, they did not believe that Spence was going to get in a car accident. That was unforeseen. And obviously, the retinal tear was unforeseen, right? But they knew Spence was a hard liver outside the ring. They knew he had bad habits. That's number one. They also knew that he was busting out at the seams. I mean, this guy, a welterweight limit in the amateurs is 152 pounds, right? So this guy had to come down 5 pounds in weight as a pro to enter the welterweight division as a pro, right? At 147 pounds. This guy turned pro, I believe, in late 2012, right? Turned pro at late 2012. Okay? So this guy has basically been in this division for 11 years. Right? And he's in his mid-30s. Right? And in interviews dating back to right before the Kell Brook fight, and I've mentioned this before and I'll say it again, he's come out and said, when they said a question was asked to him before the fight in the build-up to the Kell Brook fight, he was asked, are you concerned with Kell Brook being the bigger man? He just fought at 160. And he's having problems making 147. He's really a 154 pounder. So when he's really truly and fully hydrated come fight night, he's going to be the bigger man in there. Are you concerned about that? And Errol Spence's reply back in 2017 was, well, I'm a big welterweight too. I'm walking around at about 175 pounds myself. Think about that, guys. Think about that. Back in 2017, walking around at 175 pounds, right? Walking around at 175 pounds, having to lose almost 30 pounds every fight camp. And now it was rumored that at one point, I think he said during one of his long layoffs, he went up to like 190 pounds. And this is a guy, and again, this is no shade on the man. I mean, these are all facts. I like the guy. I'm not trying to disparage the guy or diminish the guy. I know it sounds like I am, but I'm not. But again, if they were really smart over at PBC, like if they really cared about him, the fighter, they would have seen all this stuff. Now, this is without the car accident. This is without the retinal tear. This is the guy that probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, should have been fighting at 154. But at the time, he was advised to stay at 147, in my opinion, because that's where the money fights were. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I always thought that they were going to cash him out against Crawford, right? And this was a huge event, right? Now, you can argue they marinated it, and if they fought earlier, it wouldn't have been as big as it was now. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think this always would have been a big fight if it was promoted properly, and D-Style made a great point. Imagine if they did do a co-promotion. Then you have the Showtime side promoting the fight. Then you have the ESPN side promoting the fight, right? You get double the promotion from both large entities. Sort of like with Fury and Wilder. We saw how big that second fight was, 850,000 pay-per-view buys. No one saw that coming. And you could attribute that to having ESPN and Showtime working together to make that fight big, right? So So imagine if back in 2019, this was a co-promoted event and you had both sides working together, ESPN and Showtime, right? Putting all their efforts into promoting this fight. Imagine what they could have done, right? And imagine, and again, we're doing a lot of what ifs here, right? But imagine if they didn't have to go up against the UFC. And D-Style made another great point. Because the UFC is on ESPN, right? And if ESPN was co-promoting this fight with Showtime, they probably would have said, "Hey, we're going to move this UFC event and we're going to do this." They would have had to, right? If they were going to show it on both ESPN pay-per-view and Showtime pay-per-view, more than likely they wouldn't have had to go up against the UFC because ESPN has that deal with UFC, right? So think about that. Think about that. So the fight arguably could have been bigger if it was a co-promoted event, in my opinion. D-Style, we were talking about this yesterday. You made a great point. So this is probably going to end up doing close to 700,000 pay-per-view buys. Great. It's going to end up generating about $80 million. Great. But who knows what it would have generated if both ESPN and Showtime were working together to promote it, right? And who knows how big it would have been if it wouldn't have had to go up against the UFC, which it more than likely would not have if ESPN was involved, because they would have moved that UFC card to another date, right? Because they're not gonna show both cards. They can't, right? They're not going to do a double event, right? Double pay-per-view event. So you could have argued, for the sake of the fighters, if they did a co-promotion, could have been a bigger event. Could have been more exposure for both guys. Now, again, this was a great event. This was a successful event. There's no shade on Showtime. But Showtime and PBC, in my opinion, put themselves over the fighters here. Now, both fighters got great paydays. Don't get me wrong. But you could argue that not having to go up against the UFC and having ESPN and Showtime working as a unit, it's quite possible this fight could have even been bigger. It's just my opinion. D-Style's opinion as well, right? D-Style's opinion as well. But at the end of the day, PBC wanted to hedge their bets, and they were putting their future first and foremost ahead of Errol Spence's future. So again, we're going to play the what ifs. We're going to play, oh, why are you making excuses? These are just legitimate points, in my opinion, that you have to think about. What if they fought back in 2019 or late 2018, early 2019, before the car accident, right? In my opinion, you would have gotten a better version of Spence. Now, again, I always thought Spence would lose. But in my opinion, pre-car accident, it's my opinion, you more than likely would have gotten a more competitive fight, right? That's number one. And we're going to go back to the co-promotion aspect that I mentioned earlier. If you had two networks working together, think with them two big entities working together, you very well could have had a bigger event with more pay-per-view buys. That's number two. More money for the fighters. Possibly, right? Now, Errol Spence, after all that's happened, and then you add in that beating that he suffered, I don't think he'll ever be the same again. I think he should retire. So yeah, Spence goes out making a lot of money, right? Got a great payday, $25 million. Love it. But now, as a result of waiting so long, and again, they could not foresee the car accident, obviously, and they could not foresee the retinal tear. But keeping him at 147 for as long as they did, advising him to stay at 147. And again, this is just my opinion. How do you know they were what? My opinion. They were putting these fights in front of him at 147 for a lot of money. They were trying to entice him to stay at 147 longer than he should, in my opinion. And as a result of that, in my opinion, right, they damaged his health. So if I'm in Errol Spence's camp, I'm saying to myself, we got to make this fight with Crawford sooner than later, because the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be on us. The harder the weight cut's going to be, right? And I'm not going to lie to you, folks. I'm not going to lie to you, because we tell the truth here, right? Whether it hurts or not, we tell the truth, right? And I know we don't want to take away from Terence Crawford's victory. We don't. And Terence Crawford should be rewarded for his discipline outside the ring, should be rewarded for not drinking and smoking, right? Should be rewarded for not going out and partying, should be rewarded for always being in good shape, whether the fight is announced or not, right? This is a guy that lived the life of a fighter. With all due respect, as great as Errol Spence is, as strong-willed as he is, once that bell rings, there's no quitting him. We can say all those things. Two things can be true at the same time. But outside the ring, we have to be honest. And this is not just Errol Spence. A lot of fighters have gone down this road. Even the great Muhammad Ali, the great Mike Tyson. Outside the ring, even the greats, right, did not live the life of a fighter. Well, you're not a fighter. Well, why would you make that judgment? Well, because we've seen guys like Floyd Mayweather, Andre Ward, Bernard Hopkins, Terence Crawford, right? Canelo Alvarez, right? These guys have shown us the example, right? Not me. These guys have shown the example of what it's like and what it's supposed to be living the life of a fighter outside the ring, right? They've shown us that. So again, we compare fighters to their contemporaries. We don't compare fighters to ourselves. I couldn't walk a minute in Errol Spence's shoes. I couldn't walk a minute in Terence Crawford's shoes, right? So I'm comparing them to their contemporaries, right? That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. Okay? So, in my opinion, and I'm using that a lot right now because this is all opinion. I'm prefacing a lot of these statements with, in my opinion, because this is my opinion. It's how I feel. It's what I believe. The longer they took to make this fight, right, the more of a disservice they were doing to Errol Spence, because they knew. Everyone knew. And you could lie and pretend you didn't, or you can downplay it all you want. But you knew all the way back to 2017. Errol Spence was on borrowed time at 147. He was struggling way back in his 20s to make this weight. So did you really think, let's be honest here and cut out all the fucking bullshit. Did you really think at 33, 34 years old, it was going to get easier? Oh, no, you're making excuse. No, I am talking fucking reality, right? I'm 54 years old. I go to the gym every day. I walk every day. I try to stay in the best shape that I can. But guess what? I could tell you how great I feel at 54, but guess what? I don't feel the same as I did when I was 34, right? That's the fucking reality of life. That's the reality of life. And I could lie to myself all I want and say, oh, I train smarter now. I know more about nutrition. Again, that's true. But I will never, ever be 34 again. Right? So at 33, 34 years old, the reality of the situation is that weight cut is 1,000 times harder than it was at 24. If you're going to stay at the same weight. And it's crazy how Marvin Hagler, another guy, lived the life of a fighter outside the ring, managed to stay his whole career at 160 pounds. And there was one reason for that, and one reason only. It's called discipline. It's called discipline. Right? And the thing about discipline, it's a funny thing. Funny thing about discipline, because once again, when that contract is signed, right? Once that fight is announced, once that training camp begins, I firmly believe in my heart that Errol Spence trains extremely hard to the best of his ability and leaves no stone unturned, right? I believe that. I believe that. Once that bell rings, when Errol Spence enters that ring, the mental strength, the mental fortitude, right? The determination, the will, that's an extremely high level, right? That's something that you just have to have, right? You can't teach that shit. That's something that you have to have. So I believe that. But here's the problem. When there's not a fight announced, when there's not a contract signed, when there's not a training camp, that's where the problems arise, in my opinion. Good morning, brother. How you doing today? What's going on?
Good morning, my brother. I just was gonna chime in on a few of your topic about Earl Spence.
Okay. Go right ahead.
No, I really think it was more of Earl Spence than PBC or any of these handlers. He wanted to be undisputed, so he stayed the course. So he could have moved up after probably after Kell Brook, because I noticed his body changed after Kell Brook. For that Kell Brook fight, he was big. He had, his shoulders were spread apart. He was solid. I think he was using that other trainer, Blu-ray.
That's what they say. Yeah.
So, after that, you could tell he got more streamlined. His body's more streamlined, straight up and down, instead of kind of wide, like an hourglass. So he stayed there for the money. I remember Ellie asked him if he was the same. He was like, no, he wasn't the same. So he knew he wasn't the same. They knew he wasn't the same. And they didn't want him to fight Bud. They have Keith Thurman. They have Boots Ennis. There's a whole lineup for Earl to fight. but he wanted that fight because I think Earl is cashing himself out. So he knows he's not the same, and the biggest bag is with Bud. So why not take this next fight and cash yourself out?
Well, let me just ask you a question, and obviously this is purely hypothetical. In your opinion, win, lose, or draw, if this fight gets done early 2019, do you think it's a more competitive fight?
I think it's more competitive. Yes.
Do you think he suffers less damage?
Yes.
Do you think
Because
after the, I'm sorry, do you think after this fight that he's lost something that he can never get back?
yes.
So again, we can play hindsight is 2020 all day, right? But the writing was on the wall. The longer they waited to make this fight, the worse it was going to be for him from a physical standpoint. Would you agree with that?
From a physical, but not an economical.
Do you think that they still could have made money on this fight in 2019, or you think by waiting the fight was bigger now? Is that your position?
My position is the fight is bigger now, but also I still have Crawford beating Earl back then. So
Okay.
that takes away Earl's money from him fighting, generating money. He don't have the belts. He's not the champ. He held on those belts for a while. So, they had to maneuver their guys with Earl because they have the belts. So
Okay.
I think it was smart on all the parts to stall it just to get their guys some fights. You got Ugas, you got Sean Porter, you had Danny Garcia, you had, Danny, the other Danny, the other Garcia,
Yeah, Mikey. So so
Mikey
so your
Garcia,
so your position is by fighting all those other fights in between, he was
in
able to
house,
make a
in
lot of
house,
money and make
in
a lot of
house.
money. Yeah, he was able to make a lot of money. And if he were to lose to Crawford in 2019 or even 2020, then he wouldn't have had all those fights and made all that money. In other words, is what
Correct.
is what you're saying.
Correct.
So let's just say, right, that right after the Ugas fight, they make the fight, and they don't wait another year and a half. Even in that situation, do you think that would have been better? Like waiting this other year and a half. So, because to me, it seems as though they were just waiting for Crawford's contract to be up with Top Rank because they just did not want to do a co-promotion, right? So, because they were so hell bent against doing a co-promotion, even that year and a half that they took after Spence had the 3 belts, right? That even had an effect, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Talking about the layoff?
Yes.
Well, it was more of strategy on Bud's part because Bud took that fight in between.
Yeah.
So Earl wasn't going to fight anyone because I'm thinking they have even talked about it on the download, them too, because Earl know he's finished. So Earl is looking for the biggest bag possible. And
Okay.
Earl could have took a fight in between, but he
Yeah.
didn't because he said it out of his mouth. He didn't want to risk anything.
Well, not even taking a fight in between, but trying to make that fight even like right after the Ugas fight. Like not having no so in other words, after the Ugas fight, why not make this fight like 6 months, 5-6 months after that? Is what I'm saying. Why wait another year and a half to make it? In other words, and let me ask you this: Did this fight have to have all the belts involved? Would this fight have been a monster fight without having all the belts involved? Because most people believed that these were the 2 best guys, anyways. Like Mayweather, Pacquiao, they didn't need all the belts. Tank and Ryan didn't need all the belts. In your opinion, did this fight, and was it bigger because it was for all the belts? Do you think they needed that selling point in order for this fight to be a big fight?
Man, I've seen guys you know, they're great boxers and they can perform in the ring, but without the bells and whistles is really not the same. The pageantry makes it a difference. So
Okay.
without all the belts, yeah, what you'd have got to see was a master class boxing against a guy who should be who's not who just against an average good boxer, you know. So it'd have been just, you know, a regular fight.
Okay.
You know, you wouldn't have had the big crowd hollering. It wouldn't have been as intense. Just been a regular fight, but with the bells and whistles and with history on the line, so it changes everything.
So you believe that by marinating this fight, I don't want to keep asking you the same question, but let's just put a bow on top of this. You do believe by waiting from a financial standpoint, it made the fight bigger. You do believe that.
I think it made the fight bigger. It also allowed Crawford to 100% fill out into to that weight.
Okay.
Um, I think it was all around the perfect timing. I think Earl needed the bag, the next two bags. The next one gonna be at 54. That way, the people will still buy it in the hopes of it was the weight, and he gonna get another big bag, and hopefully he can win it. If he, I'm a Bud fan, but hopefully he can win it and maybe fight again. But if he loses his next fight, I think Earl is gonna retire.
Do you think he should retire now, or do you think he should go for that one last fight? Do
Oh,
you
he
think
gotta go. The bag is there, man. He gotta go get the bag, brother.
you think that this fight is going to be as big as the first one was based off of the result of the first one? You think they could sell this again?
Oh yeah,
You do believe that?
definitely.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because it's not gonna be at 47. It's gonna give the believers a little chance. And the pageantry with all the stars was out there so much. It's gonna be big, man. It's gonna be a big fight.
Do you think that this fight happens in December, or do you think it's gonna take do you think Spence is going to have to take a year off to recover from this? And do you think that a commission is going to sanction him in December? Don't you think they're
Yeah.
going to make him wait long before he gets back in the ring?
Nah, I think it all depends on if he took any damage of I mean he took damage, but I'm talking about like if his orbital bone or if anything is ruptured or fractured or if you have any type of internal damage,
Yeah.
they won't. But just the swelling, the dude swells up. I didn't see him his lips swole up and his face swole up before. He looks like that. I mean he
Okay.
took a beating, don't get me wrong, but he does swell up. So if once that swelling goes down and they run the test and it comes back, he's clear. Um, yeah, December, let's go. Get the bag. If you can win it, you move. You know, you Tim fight Tim or somebody gonna fight Tim. I think Bud need to fight Tim, but hey, keep going until you lose again.
Which
But
fight? Which fight would you rather see? Would you rather see Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence next, or would you rather see Terrence Crawford versus Tim Tszyu next? What do you
oh,
think's the
Tim
best
Zoo,
fight?
Tim
Yeah.
Zoo.
Okay. 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 But you think that you're pretty confident that that's going to happen next, Errol Spence versus Terrence Crawford. You're pretty
Like I
confident
said,
with
if there's no internal damage, no broken eye stuff,
that. Okay.
they're definitely fighting again next.
Yeah.
Definitely
And
at
again, I don't.
54.
I always wish the best for all fighters, but something tells me if he goes under some stringent testing, because now they're probably going to really look at him even more closely than they've ever had before after this, right?
Right.
I suspect that something's going to come up, and I hope it doesn't. I really do, but I suspect after that and everything that's happened to this guy, and just dehydrating himself so much, and the brain being the last thing to rehydrate during a rehydration process, and taking those shots and seeing him talk and walk and move during the week of the fight and after the fight and during the fight, I just have a hard time believing that this guy is going to get sanctioned to fight Crawford again. I just have a hard time. I have a hard time believing they're going to let it happen. But I could be wrong. I mean, they let Muhammad Ali fight Larry Holmes and Trevor Berbick. We've seen what they've done in this sport, right? So who knows? But when you got guys like Stephen A. Smith and you got a lot of sports personalities begging for this fight to not happen next, or at least have Spence wait at least a year, right? Then I don't know. I think Spence will probably take a year off, and then you'll see Terrence Crawford fight a guy like Tim Tszyu, and then maybe Spence will come back and fight the rematch. I have a hard time believing this is going to be an immediate rematch. I just have a hard time believing that.
Well, I mean, Earl cannot fight anyone else.
What's what I'm saying? Like he should just take a year off and just not fight it, not take any damage to that head. No sparring, nothing.
No, that's if you want to continue your career. If you want to cash out.
Oh, okay. So you're thinking that, well, even if he wants to cash out, is a commission going to allow him to go in there right away after this beating? That's a tough dilemma that we have here, because we have seen commissions who just don't care and they'll license fighters. But then you have other commissions like the New York State Athletic Commission who wouldn't license Evander Holyfield because they said, this guy has diminished skills, right? So it all comes down to what a commission like Vegas will do, what a commission like Texas will do, what a commission like California will do. After seeing this, right, and hearing the cries for him to retire, are they going to just look at this a lot more closely? That's all I'm asking. But you could be right too. Again, boxing sometimes just doesn't give a fuck, right? They'll license people when they know they probably shouldn't, right?
Hey man, my name is Dead Game Boxing, so that tells you everything about what I think about it.
Yeah,
let them go, man. And I think it should be in Dallas Stadium next. Hell with it.
That'd be a good fight.
Bring it to Texas, man. Then you're gonna get it sold out.
Yeah, that'll be a good fight, man.
Because it made Bud a superstar. This fight here.
This was definitely a breakthrough fight for Bud. Like, we're seeing him everywhere now. Like, and let me ask you this. Now that Bud kind of feels appreciated, you notice a change in his behavior? Like, now he's more outgoing. Now he wants to talk to people now that he feels that, I'll talk to you now because now you got to give me the respect. Before you weren't giving me the respect, so why should I talk to you, right? Now he's getting the respect. You see that change in him now that he's going out there, he's talking to everyone, he's doing all these interviews. He's making his victory lap tour, and he's hitting, all the stops here, right? That's a great thing, man. That's only going to help him moving forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, but he needs a better PR, bro, because he's stopping the YouTube channels. I never seen him on the Late Show or something mainstream.
Well, we'll see. He was on Joe Rogan a couple of years ago, but
Yeah, I still like YouTube.
Yeah. So you're saying he's got to kind of like come on the YouTube channels like some of these channels on here now.
Well, I think he needs a PR, man. I think he needs somebody that tells him, that's going to set up dates and you need to do this, and you're the man now, so you need to understand how to. Because the dude is a family guy, bro. The dude was just traveling, bringing his daughter to a game the day after the fight.
Yeah.
So, the dude, he don't understand. And he's going to retire soon anyways. He wants people to appreciate him once he's gone, So, I think he has 3 more fights, and he's going to retire.
So, is Terrence Crawford the A side now moving forward? Any fight he fights? Except for Canelo, if he was going to fight Canelo at some point. Besides Canelo, would you say that Terrence Crawford is the A side now? He's got the leverage and moving forward in any fight that he fights at 154, even if it is a guy like Spence.
Yeah, he's the A side. The only way he wouldn't be the A side, like you say, at 160 against Canelo. Canelo come down to 160, I think Canelo will be the A side. But that Charlo fight, man, that's gonna be interesting, bro.
Do you think win, lose, or draw after Canelo, do you think Jermell will come back down to 154, or do you think he goes down to 160? I don't know, man. I'm skeptical on that. I think he goes to 160. I don't see him going all the way back down to 154 after going up to 168 to fight Canelo. What are your thoughts on that?
Nah, he's gonna come. He's gonna come down to 54. But I think if he lose to Canelo, the gusto, like him and Crawford, that fight. I think right now the Charlo Crawford fight is bigger than the Canelo fight right now.
Wow.
Think about it, man.
You could make an argument. You could make an argument on that. We could, because Canelo's been away from the U.S. pay-per-view market for a while. Like, he's been fighting on the zone, which I didn't think was a great move. I don't think that was a great move in terms of exposure and PR. So we'll see. But, we did see when Canelo came back and did fight Caleb Plant, how it did 800,000 pay-per-view buys. And once again, that was another card that was going up against a UFC card. So who knows how much that would have done without going up against a UFC card. So, but you have a good point, though. Crawford did get a big boost after this fight. Like, a lot of people are talking about him. He's all over YouTube. He's all over TikTok. He's all over social media, and people are talking about him. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
He's the man, bro. For this little short bit of time, he's the face of boxing. He's the face of boxing for this short bit of time. Yeah, man, think about it. But it took for this to happen. To me, he was always the goods, but it took this and he's going to have a short time to do it. You see, I think he's one of my favorite fighters. And I have to say this before I go.
All right.
And it might not be healthy, but I think he should fight until he lose 2 fights.
Crawford, you're saying, or Spence?
Crawford.
Okay.
Until he lose 2 fights. That means lose 1 fight and then a rematch, or lose a fight and win the rematch and then keep going until he lose 2 fights. I don't see why you retire undefeated.
Okay.
If you that good, he's 35, 36. He could fight till he's, 39, 38, 39. Damn near 40. Or he could pull a Bernard Hopkins with it, the way he lives, the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Just keep fighting until you lose 2 fights.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's selfish to retire, I think, like Floyd did.
Well, he said he doesn't care about breaking Floyd's record and being the 50-0. He said he don't care about that. So
yeah, man, forget about that. Oh man, fight until you lose.
Do you think he will? Who do you think is going to beat him if he continues to fight?
Well, he's going to have to go up to 54 to 160. I think he can retire at 160 if he, 54. I think he can retire 54, 160. I think Boots. He's going to be an older man, a young, more mature Boots. Somebody's going to be able to beat him, but there's going to always be somebody that's going to come up to beat you.
So you don't think this guy retires undefeated?
I don't want him to. He could retire now. He could, but I don't want him to. And he's my favorite fighter, but I don't. Just keep going, man.
So you don't care about you don't care if fighters have losses. Doesn't bother you at all.
Not at all, brother. Not at all. Like I say, he's my favorite, and I want him to fight until he lose.
Okay.
Pass the torch.
Gotcha. All right, brother.
Man, it was a pleasure, brother. I'm gonna let you go to your next call.
All right, man. You got it.
Peace.
You be good. Yeah, I mean that was some good discussion, man. He made some great points. We got to respect that. I don't have a problem with any of his points. I mean, again, this is all just opinion stuff. So we don't know what's going to happen next, man. We definitely don't know what's going to happen next. My opinion, though, I do have a hard time seeing anyone beat him at 154. I'm just trying to look at the landscape up there, and I just don't see it. Will Boots eventually come up to 154? Possibly, yeah. I'm sure he will. But will Crawford still be there when Boots comes up? That's what we don't know. That's what we don't know. All right, I was hoping that some other people would jump on and give their opinions. I dropped the link. If anyone wants to jump on, let me know. But if not, I'll probably close this out and just make sure you check out the Ringside Reporter podcast tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, with myself, Eric Lorder. Make sure you check out the Roundtable every week. This week it's going to be on D-Styles channel, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and we alternate weeks. So the week after that, it'll be on my channel. So you know what time it is. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. Peace out. Take care.